Number 3. This is the Hal Video Podcast, and we are delighted to welcome my good friend from Monterey, California, from Carmel, Glenn Sadowski from Optimal Health Acupuncture and Bodywork. Glenn, good morning.
Good morning, Hal.
Great to go ahead.
Great
I'm
to
sorry.
talk to you. What's on my mind?
No, I just said go ahead. I'm sorry because, this is a conversation that we're going to have together, but it's really all about you, your views. And you really wanted to talk, I know, about this inhumane immigration policy that the current president is ramping up as we speak. People have been personally victimized by it.
Well, I have patients who have told me horrific stories.
Well, tell us, share, please.
Okay,
No
so I have
names.
a patient who has a business as a housekeeper, has homes all over Pebble Beach, Carmel, Monterey, Salinas, and she hires 8 or 9 housekeepers to work for her. Last Tuesday, 3 of them had ICE visit their house and asked for papers and were deported. So she lost 3 of her employees, and she's going to lose business because she can't find other people to work at that rate, and nobody wants to come out of their house right now.
Who can blame them, right? I mean, this is so horrific. So these are folks who've lived in this country for, who knows how long. They have a life here.
Years. Yeah.
And they're just taken away.
And nobody knows except the people who know them close that they're gone.
They're basically disappeared.
Yeah, they're apparently what I've heard, and this is all, from a person who heard, just like I heard probably, is that they're just dropping them off like 10 or 15 miles on the other side of the border. That's it.
Unbelievable. What about family members? What about kids? Of any kids, any husbands and wives separated, or close family members who
not
now
personally,
are bereft?
No, not personally, but I do know that she also told me that they rounded up everybody who, how some of the workers hang out around Home Depot looking for jobs. They rounded them all up and deported them.
Unbelievable.
On Wednesday. And the local county has said they're not going to help ICE enforce any of this deportations. And so it's just the feds coming into California and doing that. And I don't know if there's anything we can do locally other than get out on the street and protest.
You're listening to the Hal Video Podcast. It's February 26th, Sunday morning, both on the East Coast where I am, on the West Coast where my good friend Glenn Sadowski, he is from Optimal Health Acupuncture and Bodywork. OptimalHealthMonterey.com is his clinic if you want to check that out. But we're really here to talk about politics. Glenn was just so upset by these personal stories, individuals that he's heard about through a client who have simply had their lives completely uprooted, have been ripped from this country. Glenn, what do you recommend at this time, my friend?
Well, I immediately called Kamala Harris's office, Dianne Feinstein's office, and Jimmy Panetta's office the next morning. And I'm trying to set up a meeting with Jimmy Panetta, with Melissa, my wife, and several other families where we can go in as a small group. We're calling it an affinity group. People are starting to develop groups of people who can go in and talk to their representatives in larger groups rather than one-on-one, because they will meet with you. So I'm awaiting a call back from Panetta's office. Kamala Harris's office did not return my call, and Dianne Feinstein's office doesn't even have a voice machine. It just rings and rings and rings, and then it goes dead.
Well, I got to say, bravo, Jimmy Panetta. I mean, good for him. By the way, you saw me fighting this cable around my neck, this headset. The purpose of it was to not be so obtrusive as those big, cans that we used to wear in the studio when we did radio, Glenn. But I think you can still see the wire. I should have had it going back through my sweatshirt, so I didn't do that.
Well, on tape, maybe.
And I tried some Dave. I don't know what to do about it. Hey, it's amateur hour here, although we try to do a professional professional Halcast, if you will.
Anyway, when I called Jimmy Panetta's office, it was just like somebody answered the phone. You didn't even go through a machine, any kind of recording to get. No, you go through a recording that states you have to give your zip code, and then you get put right through to Panetta if you want a your House of Representatives rep. But with Kamala Harris, there's a machine that you leave a message with. They say they're going to get back to you as soon as they can, and apparently that's not 48 hours. And
Well, to be fair, she's a senator. She's one of two senators in a state with 35 million people, Glenn. I mean, it's the size of a pretty good sized country, California is. So it's not going to be
I know, but
necessarily.
I'm here. I'm on YouTube with you right now. I've got a voice.
That's true. That's right. That's what Jack Quirk said. By the way, Halcast won. Jack Quirk, outstanding Halcast. You can go to my channel where this is being broadcast live on YouTube, Hal Ginsberg channel. And also I post these at the website, halginsberg.com. They're free. They're open, to the public domain. So anyone who wants to share them, please do. Although I'd like to know if you do share them, but otherwise they're, freely available. Glenn, yeah, Jack Quirk's attitude is this is exactly what we need to do as citizens is get out there, get on media, write, do video, share, talk, network, and I'm with him. But ultimately, the power resides in the elected officials. And Kamala Harris, from all I've read, is on the right side of these issues. She's for
I
the.
believe so. Yeah. I
So
don't know if Einstein is.
no, I don't. I'm
I
not.
think she's
I'm
definitely middle of the road.
unclear on that as well. Is it fair for us on the left, Glenn, to be wringing our hands, to be condemning 45 when, at this point, the deporter in chief was his predecessor, a Democrat. Barack Obama deported more people than any president before him, more than W did, more than Reagan did. Reagan, of course, actually, signed off on laws that provided a path to citizenship for millions of Latino immigrants and other immigrants. So, should we recognize? Do we have a duty to recognize? Or is it? Am I correct in saying that our hands as Democrats aren't clean either?
Well, I don't consider myself a Democrat anymore. So there you have that part of the conversation, right? I think both parties are doomed for failure right now. And I think that we do need to criticize this president, whether it be something that's overt or covert that's happening, right? And we're just like now becoming more aware of the problem. Building a wall is not a solution. Deporting people who uh, clean homes for people who are do work in restaurants, who pick the produce that we eat, or who work in construction for large corporations, even corporations that are bidding on building the wall have illegal immigrants working for them. And so I think it's a problem. I think if we continue on this path, we will see several things happen. One of which is we will see the mainstream middle class of America get hit really hard with this policy in food prices and other product prices. And then we'll also see housing prices fall because I think we won't be able to afford it. We're going to be paying more for food. So people aren't going to be able to afford to buy a home. So all these people who have all these homes wherever they are, who feel like they have increased in value over the last 8 years since Obama took office, since the crash, the housing market crash in what was that 07 or 08, are going to see the value of their property go way back down into more affordable areas, prices that I could afford if my income stays the same and my expenses stay the same. But I don't believe that my expenses are going to stay the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unclear. There's the law of unintended consequences. It's true, housing prices could drop because the number of potential purchasers is going to continue to drop. The flip side of that, Glenn, is they could go up because there are fewer people to build houses. And those who will now be working on the construction sites will probably be able to demand higher wages, perhaps. And with fewer houses and higher costs constructing, the price of the homes could go up. Now, I'm not saying that will happen, but that's another plausible scenario.
No, that's totally
We just don't
plausible.
know. We just don't
Either
know.
either way, if food prices go up and housekeeping costs go, let's say it costs right now here locally, you know, $15 to $25 an hour to have a housekeeper. Somebody come in and clean your house. Like we have somebody come 4 hours a month, and she does a really great job. And the rest of the month, we just kind of keep it as good as we can, right? But we feel like we can afford somebody for 4 hours a month. But that's at $20 an hour for somebody who does a really good job, who is not from this country, shall we say.
Well, you
Now,
might be able to find for $20 an hour. I'm thinking you would perhaps be able to find an American citizen to do that work. I don't know that,
but maybe not who are as qualified and as
who would
good
do as
at
good
it.
a job. That's true.
Well, no,
You're
these
right.
people work their asses off. They're very, very conscientious, hard-working people. They come here with a sole purpose. The woman who takes care of our house comes here to take care of our house, and she sends a third of every penny
Yeah,
she makes
yeah, yeah,
back home
yeah.
to her kids who live. She's separated from her kids. They live in Mexico.
That's so awful. The greatest tragedy here is really the human cost, the human toll. Individuals who've worked hard, who are here, who deserve themselves to be able to pursue happiness, and now their lives are being ripped apart. It's so wrong. I'd like to say it's un-American, Glenn, but there's a long history in America of this type of behavior as well. These type of actions as well. Let me
Well,
ask you this: you said you're not a Democrat. You acknowledge the Democratic Party has also committed its share of inhumane actions when it comes to folks who are not citizens. What are you doing politically uh,
oh,
to try to
interesting.
fight back? Now, you called some of your elected representatives, but they're Democrats all in California. They're already doing, we hope, the best they can, with the possible exception of Dianne Feinstein. What else do you see as a way to resist?
Aside from buying weapons,
Wow, that's I don't go in that direction. Is that where you are? Are you starting
not
to?
yet. Not yet.
Okay.
But my daughter's taking archery lessons, and I'm going to. I'm going to take some archery lessons, and I'm going to consider. I've run the thought in my head of like, wow, I've never owned a gun. Should I own a gun? This is getting pretty damn serious
Would
here.
that be to protect yourself from federal officials?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, I don't know. Why do you think they'd come after you? You haven't, you
Well,
are
let's
an
say
American
let's say I'm a
citizen.
nice person and I want to house somebody.
Is that something you're considering? I know this is being discussed. I know that people are looking at the immigrant roundup and saying this is a prelude to a Holocaust. And just as good Germans, as good
Right.
Europeans would
We have
house
to be
Jews,
ready.
would set up secret annexes or put a Jewish family or a Jewish friend in a room that you wasn't apparent from the outside of the house. People are considering doing that for their friends who are not citizens here. Is that something you are seriously contemplating?
Oh, well, if it came down to that, I'm contemplating a lot of things. I'm actually interviewing right now to join a group that, you remember Lear Keith and Derek Jensen and Eric McBay, who I interviewed on
I do. I
KRXA
do.
years ago?
Yes, I
There's a
do.
group.
Lee,
Have
yes,
you
I
read
do.
any of his books? Have you read his
No,
Endgame or What We Leave Behind? You should. Very good reading.
I know. I'm a terrible reader, Glenn. I cannot,
Oh,
I try to
okay.
keep up with the current
I'm
events,
I-
and I'm not
I'm
even good at that.
I'm in the middle of the interview process to join a group called Deep Green Resistance.
Wow.
It's
Listen to you. Well, you're putting it all out there. I mean, you're leaving a
beyond.
trail. You're leaving your breadcrumbs easily followed. Are you concerned about that? That the site could be monitored? These
The
videos could
site is
also.
monitored. Deep Green Resistance is on the internet. They know who they are.
Okay.
That's how you find out about them. Why? I
Wow.
mean, if I'm not allowed to talk about them, why would they be on the internet?
Have you given up the idea, Glenn, of democratic, and I don't mean big D, Democratic Party resistance. I mean a democratic resurgence where through legal political means and when I say we, progressives, caring people, are able to take our country back. Do you think that's still plausible?
I think maybe the question is whether or not I would consider that desirable.
You would not consider desirable for a majority of it?
Democrats?
Well, I
For
said small d Democrat. So a
okay.
democratic movement, not necessarily the Democratic Party, but a democratic movement, maybe a new progressive party, the Green Party, some other party is able to generate enough of a critical mass to start electing people, and perhaps in some type of coalition with the Democratic Party is able to, forcibly move the country to the left. Do you think that's plausible? Could that happen?
The way things went the other day with the DNC chair election, not sure. Not sure. I'm happy that he chose Ellison as his second in
His
command.
lieutenant, right? His lieutenant general.
Right. I don't know what they're calling it, but I didn't even know there
I
was
think
such
it's
a thing.
lieutenant. I think the title is actually lieutenant, or
But he does.
maybe deputy
Does,
chair or
does he have to
lieutenant.
give up his Senate seat?
Congress, no, I don't believe he will give up his seat in Congress.
Okay, good, because he's needed there.
Yeah, that was one of the arguments I think that were legitimate by some Perez supporters. We'd like to keep Ellison in Congress. He is a powerful, progressive, populist voice, and there are far too few. We'd lose that voice. I think that was a fair. Now, the district he represents is solidly blue, so it's not like it would be lost to Republicans. That said, I think that was about the best argument I ever heard. That was a decent argument. Hey, we don't want to lose him. The other argument I think is that Ellison wasn't even that great, right? He's not Bernie Sanders. He had kind of waffled on whether to keep corporate money out of the DNC. He had championed some corporatists who were running in Florida, one who ran in Florida for the chair of the party there. So Ellison better, I think, on the issues clearly than Perez, but not great. So it's not as though we chose. It's not like I think a reprise of the primaries where we really had a great option in Bernie and we had a really bad option with Hillary, and the Democratic Party went the wrong way. In the Democratic chair fight that was just concluded with Ellison winning, I think there was a poor choice, Ellison, and an okay choice. A poor choice, Perez. I'm sorry,
Right,
and an okay
exactly.
choice, Ellison.
Yeah.
I said it wrong. So
Right.
it's bad. That said, though, throwing even all that out, Glenn, I think this clearly says to us the corporatists are in complete control of the Democratic Party, and the people have no real influence over its direction.
The corporations are in charge of everything. They have been for how many years now?
I
World War
guess you could
II?
say
World War II?
Reagan. I don't know.
World War
Nixon,
II? You can go back all the way to
LBJ.
JFK, before JFK, Eisenhower.
Yeah, FDR. You could say LBJ did some things that the big money really didn't like. That's possible. And
Right, but okay. But Reagan had, was it Reagan had Bechtel on his
yeah, I think it was
right,
Reagan. Yeah, Reagan.
Secretary of State, Steve Bechtel, right?
I don't know who you're talking about.
Bechtel was Secretary of State.
I
It's
think
just
you're
named
thinking of George Shultz, who had been a executive at Bechtel.
Right. Sorry. Yes, not Bechtel himself, but
Right,
my
that's
dad
a
worked for Bechtel.
company. That's a
My
company.
dad worked for Bechtel.
Okay, George
So
Shultz had been.
that's how I remember it, because we talked about a little bit at the dinner table until he really didn't want to talk about it with me anymore.
Yeah.
So when you had George Shultz in, Bechtel went into Saudi Arabia to help build oil pipelines. There's a recent connection, and now we have Tillerson, and they're going to go into Russia, and they're going to drill, and this is how.
So you're hopeless, Glenn. You don't see a political solution.
Reagan was 80. No, Reagan was 70.
He was 81, 80. He was elected in 80. He took office 81 and had 2 terms.
Right.
So
Okay.
he stepped down in
That's
January of 89, and that was when H.W. Bush took
right, so that's
office.
37 years ago. Um, and before him, Nixon was a crook, and Carter's probably the only good president we've had in our lifetime.
And even there are some questions about how, he did deregulate trucking, for example, which caused a lot of very significant
Well, yeah,
problems.
I mean, but he was
Better, I'd say better.
human. He was human.
He was human. He was human. I think Barack Obama's human. I do. I think he's a caring man, but I think he, for whatever reason, was captivated by, he was seduced by the neoliberal economic agenda, and that has been a great tragedy. For
I think,
and led directly to Trump, of course, because
yeah,
half or more all Americans are working harder for the same or less as 16 years ago. Now, you got to give, I guess, Obama some credit because he inherited a mess, but when he had opportunities to take on the military corporate establishment, Glenn, over and over he punted, over and over he failed to do that, and often empowered them.
or the banks. He could have put them in jail like they did in Iceland.
Yeah. He didn't have to go forward with these terrible trade deals, which he not only grudgingly signed off on, he actively promoted, and which again led to great losses of jobs, especially in the Midwest, especially in the areas that ultimately proved the difference in the last
Yeah, I
election.
think we can point our finger at any one person and say this is why we have Donald Trump, but we have Donald Trump. And so now more and more people are becoming active, and I think that's a fantastic thing. But my personal feelings right now is, that's it. Those are my personal feelings. That's not a
Glenn's
word.
personal feelings.
Those are my personal feelings.
It's
Is
all
my
right. Well, we've
personal
got a few more minutes. We're going to do a 30-minute
feelings.
podcast here. I'm going to keep it to 30 minutes. Glenn
Let me
Stowski with
tell you
me.
what my personal feelings are really quick though. I think I can put them into words.
All right.
I think
Yeah.
the human race has to come to grips with itself. That the human race doesn't think that it's just another animal on the planet. They think that we have control and power over all forces of the universe when we don't. The universe is going to do its thing and we will not be here one day. The planet will eventually burn out and die. And we have never shifted that paradigm where we are custodians of this beautiful planet that has the gift of life on it. And we continue to run our lives based on the deep-seated animalistic fears, creating boundaries just like lions and tiger do when they spray trees or spray the prairie, or when a bear scratches its claws on a tree. It's telling other animals, hey, this is my place. And we are animals. That's the way that it is. If we are going to survive on this planet and create a better world, we need to figure out whether or not it's even possible to get past that.
Are people like Trump, the Koch brothers, other billionaires, other right-wing billionaires, the hedge fund managers, right-wing hedge fund managers, Glenn, are they tyrants? I mean, I want to include in my list of people I'm asking about. So tyrants, who run foreign governments, dictators and the like, are they actively Putin? Are these people either deliberately or subconsciously making the planet less habitable, knowing that if there's a great die off of perhaps tens of millions, hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of people who die because of their actions, we have a depopulated planet. They will, of course, survive with the extraordinary amount of resources at their disposal. They're not going anywhere. They know that with a depopulated planet, someone's going to be able to repopulate it. It'll be them and their offspring, and their genetic legacy will predominate going forward, much as Genghis Khan's depopulation of Eurasia in the 11th century, I believe it was, or 12th century AD, ultimately resulted in him and his descendants repopulating Eurasia to the point where now 10% of all Eurasians can trace their ancestry back to to Genghis Khan. So is that what's going on? These people are depopulating the planet so that in the future they'll be able to repopulate it.
Boo. Good. That's a book. You're gonna write a book?
I've
Possible.
tried a few times, but how does that sound? Is that plausible? No, I'm not saying
No,
they're doing this
totally.
deliberately. I'm not saying
I mean,
they're
look at
saying,
what.
well, gee, if we kill all these people, then we'll get to repopulate the planet. I mean, we saw that, by the way, in Dr. Strangelove,
Well,
where
I mean,
they're in the bunker and they're talking
Bannon,
about repopulating the planet.
Bannon has specifically stated this is the beginning of the end, or the fourth turning, or whatever it's called in his philosophy. And he specifically came out, was it Wednesday or Thursday, and said, hey, we have appointed these people to head these agencies in his cabinet in order to deconstruct those very agencies. So we have DeVos, we have Tillerson, and we have Pruitt in order to discontinue even having the Environmental Protection Agency or or an education department. It's going to go completely in the favor of all the rich people and the corporations. So, and I do believe that there will be plenty of places on the planet that will be uninhabitable as a result.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense from a functional standpoint that the function that these super rich plutocrats are playing is to again kind of wipe out vast swaths of the planet and then again repopulate it with their offspring. And there's certainly a precedent for that. We can look back in history and see this
Right.
with other conquerors and tyrants who have engaged in this action.
I think it's a good book. I think you should write a book.
It does, in fact, it works from a genetic standpoint. You can point to successful examples, Genghis Khan being the most obvious. But I think there's others. You look at these English kings who, through slavery and all manner of other imperial and cruel actions, spread their imprint, their DNA all over the planet. And that often required them to kill, lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
We've got Glenn with us on the video cast, the Halcast, if you will, halginsberg.com. It's kind of depressing because it's not a happy topic, Glenn. Not a happy topic at all. You want treason brought. You want charges brought against 45, against, you mentioned his one of his top lieutenants, Bannon. You'd like to see the Veep, Pence, Paul Ryan, the House Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, the House Speaker, I should say Paul Ryan. How do you see this happening? How do you see the treason charges being brought?
I don't think the Democratic side has any power to do it, but we'll just see what happens, right? I
don't see how it happens. I don't think there's any chance.
I mean, you got McConnell, you got Ryan, you got Jeff Sessions, you've got and so they voted them in. They voted them all in. I don't know. Who did Feinstein vote for? Did she vote for any of these people?
I don't know. I haven't kept track.
There's got to be a way to find out.
Yeah, you can look it up. I haven't kept track. Some of the Democrats did vote for some of them, but it never made a difference. Every Democrat could have voted no on every single Republican nominee, and I think they all still would have gotten in.
Well, DeVos made it by Pence.
50-50, and then Pence cast the deciding vote. But every Democrat did vote against DeVos. And the only two Republicans who voted against her, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, I understand were given the green light by McConnell to vote no because he knew he had sufficient. He knew that every other Republican was going to hold the line, was going to toe the line.
So that probably saved their own butts for their next election.
Yeah, that was the point. Hey, guess what? We voted against Murkowski. Right. Murkowski and Collins say, hey, we voted against DeVos. But they knew it was a fake. It was a phony vote. It was the die had been cast already. Yeah. It's terrible, Glenn. I'm pretty hopeless myself. I don't have.
Yeah, no. I think society as we know it needs to change. Civilization most likely needs to probably be brought to its knees. in
Do you
order for
think that that's
small
the
families.
silver lining? Is that the silver? I'm just cutting you off because we only have another minute or two. I don't want to keep listeners or viewers too long on this. Is that the silver lining that Trump 45, whatever you want to call him, will bring us to our knees to the point where we're actually truly activated to fight and to unite? The 99% would actually unite in favor of real progressives to take.
I think it's a total possibility, and we'll see, because like if they do construct a wall, are the protests going to be huge? Are they going to be multiple millions who protest and are willing to like go to jail for the wall being built? Or when, at what point are people going to really hit the streets? Because if they don't do it for the building of the wall, what are they going to do it for?
Well, even hitting the streets isn't enough because we saw that in Occupy.
No,
We had a long-term occupations in various places around the country. It was a big friggin' deal, Glenn,
no, they're going to have to do
and
illegal
it didn't do anything at all.
They're going to have to trespass, and they're going to have to be willing to get arrested and spend some time in jail in order to stop the building of the wall, or are we just going to keep letting them do it?
I think we're going to have to elect progressives. In the end, what we're going to
In
have
2
to
years,
do.
it's going to be too late. That wall will be built.
Well, but I mean, if we're going to take our country back, if we elect progressives, then the next step is we tear the wall down.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it. Hey, Glenn, listen, it was great talking to you. This is the Halcast, the Hal Video Podcast. It's going to be at halginsberg.com. Hopefully, Glenn will post it as well. Glenn, thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you.
All right, man. You too. Thank you. And again, that will do it.